Everything around.
There it is.
Oh, there we go. Hey everyone, I'm Jennifer Purcell with Spark Flash Fiction, and tonight I am here to chat with Marline Williams. Uh,
Hi,
Mar-
everybody.
Marlene identifies as a Marylander. Having been born and raised there, she reluctantly lives in politically supercharged, perpetually cloud-covered Western New York. Thus her delight in writing sweet yet swooning novels set in simpler times and sunnier places. Marlene's debut novel, All Men Are Liars, typically triggers lively conversations when read in public venues. She's hammering away on the sequel. Now, I just love that cover. Every time I look at it, it just looks so
Isn't
good.
it great? And you know what's exciting, Jennifer, is the same gal, Rosanna M. White, that did this cover has agreed to do the cover for the sequel. So I'm super pumped about that. So excited. She's so talented, and I feel really, really honored to have her as my cover artist.
She is very talented. I'm always impressed whenever I find out that a cover was her. I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right. Well, this is the third time I think that we've chatted. So I'm excited about this. First off, tell me the inspiration behind this particular story, Sunshine, Lollipops, and Slipstreams.
So if anybody is my generation, and probably there's, I don't know, commercials and stuff out there that use this song, but it's a Leslie Gore song from the 1960s. Sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows, everything. And it's just a very poppy hit. And I've always loved that song. And I was thinking about sports, and I am the least sporty person on the planet. I am very, very sedentary. And I used to, I don't know, like I ran hurdles in college, which is about as, I was just trying to get some exercise. But I started thinking about the Olympics. I have a friend that when she was in high school, actually almost junior high, they went to Sapporo, Japan. It was like a father exchange kind of a thing, like the jobs switch. And they were there during the Olympics. And I always thought, what a cool thing to be in a big city during the Olympics. So I thought, well, I'd love to do an Olympic story. And that was part of it. And then I thought, well, what sport? So I started watching I knew I wanted to do it in the 60s because that's my bandwidth. And I started watching some YouTube videos, and there was this giant, horrific bike crash in the Tokyo Olympics. And was really different and interesting about the Tokyo Olympics is the course. Usually bicyclists are, that's like an up and down kind of course, right? And they're huffing and puffing, and you've got two or three leaders in the pack, and everybody sits in what they call the slipstream. So it's kind of like when you're driving on the highway and you've got a big old truck, and if you get just right in the back, it just kind of sucks you along and you can save some gas. Same idea. When you're cycling, you get behind someone, and the pack of bicyclists, which is called the peloton. Does that sound familiar? I know, I never knew this, right? That's where they got the name. And so the peloton, they take turns being the leader. It's kind of a groove thing. So then when I saw this crash, and it was epic, like one guy slid, and it was pouring rain and a very flat track. So there was 100 guys in the peloton. Usually there's like four. So the peloton was packed. And so if one guy goes down, they're going to take like a slew of people with them. And I saw that and I was like, oh, I think I know my hero now. I think he's one of the guys that's tangled up in a snarl of, like bicycle tires and things. So I thought about him, and then I thought what would be interesting would be he's eavesdropping on his neighbor, and because he's so bored and his leg won't heal. And he thinks life is terrible. My life is so terrible, boo hoo. And then he discovers that other people might have some challenges too. And so I've always loved the story. Some of your readers may be familiar with the book Karen by Marie Killelea. And this is a 1950s book that was a memoir, basically, of a mother talking about her daughter who has cerebral palsy. And Karen became the quintessential handicapped, as we called it back in that day, disabled young lady, young girl. She was brilliant, but she did have cerebral palsy. And so her mother wrote the book, and this book was the breakthrough book for people to understand that cerebral palsy was not because your parents were sinful. That's what people thought. They would put cerebral palsy's children like in institutions. They would, it was really, really serious. And when this book came out, it was a game changer for that particular difficulty. And so I've always loved that book, and I've always loved the character of Karen. She was such a strong little girl, and she was so sweet. And I thought I'd like to have a character, her be sort of like the go-between, the impetus for this story. So that was the inspiration, and I wrote it, and I just fell in love with the characters. I just thought, oh, I just love these kids. So that was just, I was really surprised that it was published because I thought, I don't know, maybe they'll feel funny about talking about cerebral palsy, but you guys are so great. You just immediately took it to your hearts, and that made me so happy.
Well, that was it was like a little bit of a surprising moment in the story, but it added so much to it. And like it's always amazing to me. You only have like maybe 1,000 words, and you have to try to pack as much into that. And when she popped onto the page, it was almost like it became 10 times more meaningful as a story.
Yeah. I
Because
really loved her. I just loved her. And here's something amazing, Jennifer. This is so cool. And I don't think my friend will have any difficulty me sharing this. There's a woman in one of my Bible studies, and I've known her for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and her husband just died maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. And she read my story and she sent me a little note and she said, I just wanted to let you know your story was super meaningful to me. And I thought, really? That's interesting. And then I thought, well, maybe she has someone in the family, that has a disability. And the next time we got together for the Bible study, she shared that she has cerebral palsy. And I had never known this. And she said, I just wanted to thank you because you made that little girl normal.
mhm.
You made her a normal, funny, smart little girl. And she said, and that's so important for people to understand that people with disabilities have the same kind of senses of humor and, daily life. And she literally was a poster child when she was a little girl for cerebral palsy in several states. So she said, I felt like the Lord was showing me he was looking out for me by, I see you. And she said, did you put that cerebral palsy in there for a reason? And I was like, just kind of came to me. So I felt like the Lord used this little story, which was so sweet.
Yeah. And what's also interesting is you mentioned that the song that you got the title from was by Leslie Gore. And if I'm not mistaken, Leslie Gore was the one that sang the It's My Party and I'll Cry If I
Yes,
Have to.
that's
And that's the only song I knew of her. So when I found out that she did this song, it kind of
uh,
surprised me. So it's like I put Leslie Gore in this little box of teenage angst, I guess you could say. And then to find out that there was like almost another side to her. And then I was like, well, maybe I should be Googling Leslie Gore more often instead of listening to this one hit
that's
song.
right. Yeah, it's a sweet, zippy little song, and it's always it's my party, and I'll cry when I want to. I used to sit on my swing set and sing that as loud as I could when I was sad. It's my party and I'll cry if I want to. Just picture an 8-year-old girl just belting it out with all of her guts hanging out all over the swing set. So, yeah, Leslie Gore and I, we go way back.
Well, and it's almost another little reminder that sometimes things are not as they seem, and we put people into one little category when there's like so much more to them.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, I hope to see this little girl again because I liked her a lot.
Yeah, I did too. And I suspect that she may show up sometime in another story.
Good. All right. Okay. Next question, because you wrote this, of course, in the past. And, when it comes to new things that you put in your stories, there's always going to be research involved. So, talk to me through, you already mentioned a little bit where you watched that video for the Olympics, but talk to me a little bit more about some research that you did.
You know, it's tempting when you live through an era to think that you know all about it. But if you went through that era as a child, as I did, as a young child, as a elementary school and then junior high and high schooler, there's so much about it that you don't know because you're a kid. You're not paying attention to the news. You're not paying attention to the, like the grown-up stuff. So it's important to Not just read. A lot of people say, well, we go back and go diaries. And I'm like, not a lot of people kept diaries in the 70s. I mean, that was just not a thing. It wasn't like in the 1800s where you go back and, you read these epic
Hmm.
diaries and these, captain's logs and things. And it just wasn't as normal in the 60s and 70s. And the people that I'm writing about aren't famous. I'm making them up. So I just look at this as an opportunity. Like I like to go back and watch movies that were made in the 1970s. Things like All the President's Men and 3 Days of the Condor. I watched those when I was doing my spy story, which was for the winter or the fall spark flash fiction in what do we call that collection or whatever. And so you kind of get the vibe of what adults were watching and thinking about. Because, of course, I was not watching 3 Days of the Condor when I was in junior high. And that gives me a different perspective. So, a lot of my research is that. I'm working on a book right now that's a sequel, as I mentioned, the sequel to All Men Are Alive. I'm so excited. And it's part of it is set in London in 1974. So I have been so blessed, Jennifer, so blessed. There are Facebook groups that are all about like uh, they nostalgia or vintage this, and you can get into these groups, and these people love to tell you all about their experiences. And I got into a group that is Christian music during the Jesus People movement in London, which was different than ours. And I, of course, wasn't familiar with it. So these people are just like, oh, this was the super popular band, and this is what. And then I met a lady. I don't know if you know Kim. I'll try to remember her name later. It's just escaping me right now. But her mother lived in England in the 70s. Her mother's a Brit. And I got to interview her on Zoom, kind of like this. And she was telling me all of these wonderful memories. I'm telling you, I was writing as fast as I could to keep up with her. And Kim said to her mom, how are you remembering all this stuff? And she said, nobody's ever asked me in the last 50 years. It's all there. And I was just so tickled that she was just telling me like, oh, we used to go here, we used to do that. These were the stores. She talked about IRA bomb threats in department stores, and she said that they would get over the loudspeaker, we've had a bomb threat. And I was like, if you said that in America, there would have been a stampede, but in England, they're all like quietly filing to the door. So just getting the idea of what did people eat? What were the streets like? What did it smell like? Was it smoggy like America, or was it air cleaner? And so trying to get real witnesses, which is one of the blessings of writing in the 1960s and 70s, is people are still alive. So I can actually get first sources, original sources. And so movies, listening to the music is one of my favorite ways to just kind of soak in it. And I found the perfect song for this book. So I'm all excited. And I listen to it before I start writing. It just gets me right into the groove. So yeah, those are some very fun ways that I get to research.
Well, speaking of your sequel, tell me, is it harder writing the sequel? Because technically, like you're kind of already into this, but it's a whole new story, and you still
Yes.
gotta make sure that you're not accidentally, what's the word I'm looking for? Why am I suddenly drawing a blank? Well, you need to make sure you're not
Synchronicity.
drawing blanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is. It is. And especially if you've let any time lapse between the time you wrote this story and
Mhm.
the next. Like some authors are very smart. They close the book and then they start the sequel. Well, all the characters are fresh in their mind. And I had another book that came in between, which was Christmas in the Cascades, which is an anthology. And my book, Wild and Sweet, is like smack dab in the middle of it there. And so I was in another like group, another decade. All Men Are Liars is the 70s, and this is in the 1960s. So I was kind of sucked out of one time zone and into another. And then when I came back to this, I was like, what was I talking about again? So I had the characters. Fortunately, my dear daughter, Naomi, whom I love and adore, she and I had talked through this. She had some very important ideas she wanted to make sure that I heard. She was like, you have to do this. And I'm like, I don't know if I have to do that, but okay. But she and I kind of walk through what could be in the sequel. And I'm a pantser, not a plotter. So I don't have a big, huge outline. I just have like, here's how many chapters I think I need. I want to publish in September. And as an independent publisher, I can do whatever, I can pick whatever date I want, but you got to pick something so you kind of have, a framework. I work better under deadline. And then I was like, if the book's going to be 90,000 words long, then how many? I just sort of do the backwards project management thing where you're like, okay, I better get rolling. So I started at the end of January, and I honestly had no idea where to start. I just sat there and I said, Lord, you've got to help me because I have a sort of idea. I know I want to start in London. That's something. And the ideas have been coming hot and fast. I got to tell you, it's so cool. And there are so many neat characters. There's one character I'm deeply in love with. So it's a group of actors. And, actors are not exactly calm people. And so there's a lot of opportunity for some goofy stuff. And being a rom-com, lots of goofy stuff happens. So it is tough to write the sequel because you do have some readership now, and they're like, "Oh, well, don't do this." And I'm like, "I'm so sorry. I really have to roll with what I feel like I can do." And this is one of my favorite things is when I was selling books live at a campus event in the fall, right near the time of my debut. Um, I had so many of my readers, the people, potential readers, that came up to me and bought my book, and they were African Americans. And I was so surprised because there's nothing on the cover or in the back copy that indicates that this book is in any way particularly aimed at that audience. And they said, "What's the book about?" And I said, "Well, it's about how much of yourself do you have to sort of sublimate in order to fit in with a group of people." And they're like, "I'll take a copy." So some things are universal, some themes are universal, no matter what your background is or what your people group is. So strangely enough, when I wrote the first book, I wrote an African American character into the book, and she was one of the Dana's friends. And then somebody said to me, "Oh, no, no, you're white. You really shouldn't be writing African American characters." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not a guy either, and I am writing male characters." So, but they convinced me that that was culturally insensitive. So I bought that. More shame to me. And then when I talked with these wonderful people that were buying my book, and they said, "Oh, this sounds so wonderful." I was like, "Doggone it, that African American character is coming back." And so I'm happy to announce to anybody that read my book that bought it and said, "Gee, I sure wish there was an African American character in here that I can identify with." Good news. In the sequel, there's going to be a very wonderful, oh, I just love her, African American character named Yvette. And she is going to be it's so much fun. She's been a ball to write. And I do have some friends who are African Americans who were in that time period. So I'm going to check with them and say, is this pretty close to your experience? Or is this something that you would say, no, that would never happen because of certain social things? So I'm trying to, check all the boxes and make sure that I don't do anything untoward. But I have a strong feeling that some of those people who bought my book are going to be so tickled to meet Yvette.
Well, because that group of people, they faced so many challenges in that era, but also there were some victories where America was finally beginning to change.
Yes, exactly. This was the time of a lot of civil rights action and a lot of social change. And that was one of the big things about the 70s was like, we're not putting up with this baloney anymore. So I love that she made a surface and she was so strong. The minute I started writing her, I was like, oh, I know this woman is so cool. So I'm very happy that Yvette made the scene and she brought her boyfriend, which is even better. So I'm just having a ball with it. I really am.
And it's interesting that you say that because recently I was seeing some clips of the musical Hairspray, which I watched in high school and I haven't watched a lot recently. And I was reminded how much I love Motorbough's Maybelle. And like Queen Latifah, she did like this really good job of portraying that character to the point like her and some of the other ones almost like completely stole the
Oh,
movie away
steal the
from,
show. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
away from Tina Turnblad because I'm like, I actually want to see more about their lives and not Tina. Sorry, but
Yeah,
but it's because they were such strong characters and they were like, this needs to change and they were
yes.
working so hard for it. And I've heard that a lot of people really identified with that when they saw the musical.
Yeah, and it's kind of universal. If you have been through something in your life where you have felt either set aside or discounted, or you've had to struggle, a lot of women struggled to get through like corporate jobs at the time. That was
Mhm.
not easy. So I think there are some connection points where you can read a character and say, yeah, I kind of get that. I kind of get that. I know that there are extra challenges in some cases, but I understand that feeling. I can empathize or sympathize with it, even if I can't empathize with it. I'm very excited about that, and I just can't wait to see how it all. I have a feeling I know where it's going to go, but I don't know yet because I'm a discovery writer. So we'll see. I was very surprised this morning at what happened when I was writing. I was like, "Whoa, okay, all right then. I'm going to roll with that." So we'll see.
Well, that's exciting. I'm excited to see what happens too. But I want to ask you because when I was writing my sequel, I felt like all of this pressure to like hurry and get it out because I was like, people are waiting for this. And
Yes.
then, so do you feel that too?
Oh, I do. I
Okay.
do. And that's why I'm thinking I really want to get it out in September because this book, All Men Are Liars, came out in September. And I thought, okay, they're waiting a year. And then meanwhile, there's a billion other books that are just, coming out like popcorn on Amazon. They get what, like 3,000 books a day? You're like,
Yeah.
just hold on. It's coming. It's coming. So it's real. And I don't want to shortchange
Mhm.
the story. I don't want to just write up, that's what AI is for, right? So if you want your sequel and you don't really care anything about authorial integrity or, depth of story or heart, just plug the names and the situations into some kind of AI thing somewhere and it'll chug it out. And your readers will be like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel kind of the same. Like I know what happens in the plot, but there's no heart.
Yeah.
So readers, hang in there. I'm writing as fast as I can without leaving skid marks. Okay, that's what's happening.
And I'm always like amazed that you see these writers that put out like 4 books a year, and I'm like,
Yeah,
how?
yeah. I saw the ACFW, the Georgia branch, which I like sneak in. And you're part of that, aren't you, Jennifer? Yeah, I just joined your group, and they're very, very good at bringing in experts. And they had Kimberly Woodhouse came in just last month, and she was talking about write better and faster. And so she had a lot of great ideas, like staying focused, do your research ahead of time, and, just a ton of great ideas. And that would have been really good had I known that before I started writing. But now what's happening is I'm writing from 9 until noon every day, cranking away. And then in the afternoon, I'm taking about 2 hours and doing research. So whatever research I can jam in the afternoon, hopefully will flow over into the next morning's writings. And part of that is because one of my characters is a Shakespearean scholar. That was a great idea, wasn't it? That's just brilliant of me to do that. Fortunately, I am a Shakespeare fan and I've acted in it and costumed it, so I love it. But now I'm watching and reading one Shakespeare play a day so that I can refresh my memory. So here I am with my little marker and my script. Well, actually, I'll show you what I mean. Here's The Tempest. Here's Othello. Here's The Merchant of Venice. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, Taming of the Shrew. I can't Romeo and Juliet, Julius Caesar, and but every day I'm pulling up one of these Hummers and going onto YouTube or Amazon and watching the play and like reading along and going, oh, I gotta use that line. That's so good. So my days are a little cuckoo right now. I gotta say, a little cuckoo.
Oh man. All right, so we're starting to run out of time a little bit, so I want to real quick before we start talking about the books that we like. I've got
Mm-hmm.
to ask you about your cover. Like, how do you decide this is the way I want my cover to look like? Because when I look at yours, it seems so like I don't know how to explain it, but it's almost like quintessential 70s. It's almost like what I expect to
Yes,
see when I think of the
yes,
70s.
right. it's you feel you if you lived it, you're look at this and you're like, oh, that's 70s. Yeah, that's 70s. And part of it is, like I said, living it. Like the people that look back on it, to me, they pick the weirdest things. They're like, no, that really was not that important, you know. But if you lived it, you're like, okay, this was a huge thing. And so when I had Rosanna M. White do this cover, I sketched this for her, like these two characters holding hands in the blah, blah, blah. I said, this is what I want, but I want it to look 70s-ish. And she came up with the sunburst. And I said, oh, I love that. And then there's like this groovy flowers on the back. And we went through a couple different iterations for that. So for the sequel, what's important to me is that, like these Shakespeare books, you can tell they belong together,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have similar elements to them. You like, oh, this is part of a set. And I'm just one of those weirdos that I like things in a series to look like they belong together. Like I don't want these don't one of these things is not like the other. One of these things, you know. So I want the sequel to have a similar spine, be the same
Mm-hmm.
size, have the same groove. So Rosanna, having done this one, is much more likely to be able to do that for me than somebody coming along, you know, afterwards. It was like trying to figure out what did she do to make it look like this.
Yeah.
So I have told her that since part of it is set in London, that I somehow want that groovy Carnaby Street vibe. London was huge in the late 60s, and in the early 70s it was a little different, but pretty close. And it's like a Union Jack background or something like that. But still colors that will not hurt us when we look at the spines together. I'll be like, oh yeah, that's clearly part of the series. That's what's important to me about cover design is it should blend. Because don't you hate it when you're buying in a series and then they change the size
Mm-hmm.
and it's sitting in the shelf and you're like, I can't even look at that. It's just off. So that's what bugs me about this. That this hopefully with the Lord's help and Rosanna's brilliance, it will look like this part of the series.
I know it will because she is fantastic.
Yes, she is. She really is.
So now, have you had time to read since you've been doing a Shakespeare play a day?
You mean besides Mr. Billy Big Boy? You mean besides that? Not much. But I am reading some Georgette Heyer detective novels from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, just because her Britishness of writing is helping me with when I'm writing dialogue, especially for older people in the story, because they talk like she writes. So there's a certain formality and a structure of British sentences that are different. Like you can just throw blimey and Lord love a duck in there. You can do that kind of thing, but the sentence structure,
Yeah.
just the way that they clip their, they often cut off the subjects instead of saying I'll be right back. They'll just say coming back or something like that. So reading those books, reading British books, is really helping.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that you're mentioning your what should I say, your recreational reading time and when you're writing. I feel like we do that sometimes we don't even notice. We're like sitting there and we're like, now how did she manage that plot twist? And
Yeah.
it's like you can't turn your writer brain off even when you're reading,
Oh
which is
no, yeah.
annoying, but can also be helpful.
It can be helpful. And the one I'm reading right now is called Duplicate Death. And unfortunately, it has a heavy playing bridge theme to it. Like I can tell this woman was an avid bridge player, and I do not know anything about it. So when people, they'll say trumped her club or something, and everyone in the room goes, ah! And I'm like, what is wrong? Why is that such a bad thing? And sadly, it's a clue to the murder. Like, oh no. So I'm going to be completely blown away when she reveals the murder. They'll be like, well, remember when that guy trumped her spade? And I'll be like, oh, well, that was an important thing that I had no knowledge of. Okay, that's great. Yeah,
Well, Marlene, it is always a pleasure to talk to you. I'm so glad that we got to do this again.
me too. Me too. Before we go, I wanted to invite any indie authors or want to be any authors, to a Facebook group that I formed to pick up the slack from a group that is closing. There was a lot of people in this group, and a lot of people went, "Wah, we want to stick together." So I formed a Facebook group, and it has 3 or 4 other people helping out, and it's called the Little Red Hen Indie Author Roost. And it's just kind of a gathering for people that want to say, add a girl or keep going, or how's your project coming along? And that's been a lot of fun. And I also want to invite all my readers to keep track of me as I'm writing. If you go to Marline Williams, it's MARLINE.com. And you can get updates on the sequel, and you can read about the books that I've written. And I've got a very cool quiz that you can take to find out which 1970s superstar diva you are. And that's super fun. And just to be kind of keep up. Every month I send out the Marlene mail, and that has all kinds of cool exclusive things in it, like special stories. And I actually am working on a series of flash fiction stories that are a little longer, so you guys won't be, I won't be sending them your way, but I've learned to love flash fiction thanks to Spark. And I'm going to make a little kind of like the book funnel things where you make a little booklet, and that's coming later in the spring, if I can manage to drag myself away from Billy Big Boy here.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty.
All right, everyone. I'll make sure to put some links in the comments so you can go check all those things out. If you have not read her story yet, you definitely want to go do it. It's one of the sweeter stories. And she also has 2 other ones set in a similar time frame if you just want to get away from 2025, which I don't blame you, because sometimes you just need to step away for a while.
Just take a little pause. Just a little
Yeah.
pause.
Well, everyone, I hope that y'all have a great night and a fantastic weekend.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I love Spark Flash Fiction for doing this, for letting us connect with our readers like this. And I always have a great time with you. You are a Georgia peach.
Well, thank you. You're quite fun yourself, I have to say. All right. Good night, everyone.